Well, in today's episode of Dodging the Inquisitors, we learn about retrograde motion. Has anybody ever learned about retrograde motion? The concept of Mars kind of looking like it goes backwards for a little bit. A really cool episode 4 of Orb on the movements of the Earth. I wasn't really sure if I was going to cover this on a weekly basis, but I figure if I can get something to talk about, I'm going to talk about it. Plus, technically with my first impressions, I didn't sit down and actually talk about Raphael and his ending. I didn't want to spoil that for the first impressions. I really thought that was a really cool little point to kind of end it on, and I didn't want to spoil that for people. Usually with my first impressions, it's to kind of open people up to a show, not to spoil it. And I thought that was a really cool little twist to it, and it sort of plays into my thoughts on the show so far, is that idea of the baton pass. This idea of, yes, some people are going to end up dead trying to seek out this knowledge, and so we're going to have to kind of pass that information to the next person. And it looks like with episode 4, we actually had another pass, which I'm wondering if that's Potok. I'm wondering if that's Raphael's dad. The eyes are different because, like, I think the guy in episode 4, the heretic, his eyes are like grayish, and I don't think Potok's his eyes were that color. Yes, obviously he's facially going to look different because this is quite a bit of a time jump. I mean, we see that with Novak. Novak looks a lot different now than he did before, which does suck because I was really hoping that this would be like a turning point for Novak. Like this whole situation with Raphael, he was going to change, but no, it looks like he's going to continue to be an Inquisitor doing all the dirty work. But still, I was kind of wondering if possibly that was Potok. Like he found the information that Raphael left behind, and he's passing that on to the next person. Because I would assume that Raphael left that with his father, because he knew that his father was looking into this stuff. Like, this is something that's how Hubert got that information, is that his father kind of, impressioned that upon Hubert got caught, ends up dead, and then, yes, without directly doing it, he sort of passed that on to Raphael as well. And I would think that Raphael picked up on that, knew that he was going to die. He knew that he was going to die the moment that he got picked up. I think that night that he talked to Potok, he probably knew then, because he had those seeds, the poppy seeds or whatever, in that bag. Like, the night before they showed up to pick him up, he was already ready to die. Like, he knew this was coming. He knew there's a possibility that his father would turn him in, and I think that he planned that, already kind of prepared himself for that, and left the letter behind for his father, so that his father would find his stuff, be able to continue that on. So despite the fact that his eyes are a little bit different, or seem a little bit different, I wonder if that's him, and he's going to pass it off to Oxy and Grass. I think he's going to pass that off to them, because we obviously see that at the end of episode 3, Oxy and Glass, they find it. They look a little beat up, which is probably going to be them fighting off Novak or something like that, but they're going to end up finding this little box of information. So really cool there. Plus, additionally, technically episode 1 does spoil what happens to Oxy. I like how they're doing a lot of foreshadowing, and it's like, yeah, we kind of know what's going to happen to Oxy. We know what's going to happen after this episode, so hopefully after this point, we'll stop doing the foreshadowing and everything will be kind of left to mystery. But for now, we kind of know what's going to happen to quite a few people. So we'll see how that pans out. It's the journey. This is going to be a journey story. This is all about the journey itself, which is really cool. But anyways, going back to Raphael, like I said, thought it was a really cool little twist there. The idea that he stood up. He stood up for knowledge. He stood up for all the information that he was kind of building towards. And again, I think a lot of this has to do with him sort of wanting to pass on that inspiration. And I really almost felt like I was hoping that he would do that to Novak. Novak would see this, knowing that he has, I think he said a daughter. He has his own daughter, which, by the way, in this episode, he's literally got a letter from, I think, his daughter. Unless it was a letter that was wrote to Potok, he says that it's a charm. On the front of it, when the camera's towards him or the perspective's on his face, it says to father or whatever. And then on the letter itself, it says, thank you for your hard work, something else, take care, or something like that. So he's got a letter, I think it's probably from his daughter. So I'm kind of wondering if possibly what happened to Raphael impressioned on him somehow, or at least that'll come into the picture later on. But either way, I'm really super interested to see what they end up doing with Novak. I think he's easily one of the most interesting characters of the story because he's painted as a very cruel man, very kind of heartless, again, technically fulfilling the church's desires and doing all the dirty work, basically. And I'm curious if the passion that these people have for the knowledge of the truths of our universe will end up impressing upon him somehow, to the point where maybe he might actually decide to stand up for it, just to stand up for that information. But anyways, yes, it does seem like this is kind of going along with that inspiration. Raphael is basically inspired, and whoever got that information after him, if it's his father or somebody else, is now passing that off to Oxy and Glass. Now, let's get into 4 itself. We have 2 individuals that I think see the world in a very different way. It implies that Oxy has basically always lived his life hating the world that we're in. This is a sinful world. It's disgusting. It's the lowest point of the universe. Everything that's beautiful looks down upon us, and we're just kind of trash. We're in this sinful location. It's to remind us that we are full of sin and corruption. Whereas Grass seems to think that at least he found joy with his family, but then the plague happened, and he survived that plague, didn't like the idea that he survived, so he tries to end his own life. So he found happiness, he lost happiness, and then he regained happiness. And his regained happiness is through this message in the stars, which was Mars. Finds out about Mars, finds out about planets, how they kind of circle around in the air, and then at some point started to chart it, seeing that it was a message. Now this is really cool because, again, this is obviously implying the idea of retrograde motion. The idea that, yes, the Earth and Mars are circling the sun. And because the Earth circles the sun within a year, and Mars takes, I think, a little bit less than 2 years, every now and then we're going to be close to each other. And since we're moving faster around the sun than they are, you kind of have this feeling like it's almost like it has to curve around because we're technically, catching up to it, then passing it up, and it has that kind of motion like it's going backwards before we start to kind of circle around away from it. So that's sort of the concept they're going for here. But again, since they don't know that, they think they're the center of the world or the universe. Yes, looking out at that and seeing that above, he thinks this is perfect circle it's going to create, and then it breaks. And that kind of shatters this hope this guy has once again. Like, this dude finally found hope again after losing his family, and then he's losing it again. And it kind of reminds us this idea that, no, we are not blessed by being able to see beauty in the sky. It's still, things are still garbage. In the end, things are still garbage. I can't have this one thing. I finally found this one hope, this one joy in my life, and it's garbage. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. And it's so funny because it's interesting that he doesn't at least acknowledge how it slows down. He's charting it, and he's putting the dates to each of them. And that's going to be the points that it's the furthest away. It looks like it's moving the fastest. Over a period of nights, it's going to be moving a great distance because of how far away it is. But in the moment that it gets close to us in our orbit, it starts to slow down because we're right next to it and we're kind of going alongside of it. So it's interesting that he doesn't even acknowledge on that. Like, okay, it's odd that it's slowing down, but it could be something that he's going to piece together the moment they find that information. Oh, if we're orbiting something and it's orbiting too, now it all makes sense. Like, the moment that Glass sees that information, he's going to immediately click it all together. Like, the moment they open that box and he starts reading that info, he's probably going to see the chart of the orbit. And he's going to go, click, it works. Now it suddenly makes sense why this retrograde motion. So, really cool thing there. I like that kind of connection there. Oxy, he's the interesting one. Because both of them do end up getting kind of messed around by this heretic. The idea that he's kind of questioning the existence of heaven. And it's really getting into them because they both have their doubts already. They've experienced tragedy, or with Oxy, he's actually questioning the existence of heaven itself. And then it gets in that idea that now you have somebody that's making them question, or at least playing off that anxiety. They feed right into it. Oxy most of all, because he sort of is in a really dark place already. And now suddenly this guy is giving him this thing going, well, you're in a dark place and you're creating sort of an escape. You're creating an escape with heaven, and that doesn't exist. They create this concept to get away from tragedies, and you're trying to hide away from it. It was kind of interesting the way that he put it at some point. They're like, no, you're playing off our anxieties. It's like, no, you're trying to push away your doubts. You're pushing away the truth because you fear it. That's all. They're both basically playing the same game here. It's just whether it's a push or a pull. So actually, it's more interesting, the idea that Oxy pushes away as much as he does. And that's probably more in the fact that he's kind of grown up with this, and this is kind of the truth. Well, the evidence of this truth is the fact that, yes, I'm living amongst sin, and I'm living amongst corruption and disgust and garbage around me. But I think the thing that hit Oxy the most in this episode is not necessarily the heretic. It's the people that he kills. I think that was like the biggest gut punch that I've seen throughout the episode, was just that idea that him confirming, okay, every single time there's this belief in heaven, and I'm surrounded by people that claim they believe in heaven, but yet all these people that I'm sent to kill that because they're hired men with particularly this episode, they're sent to do these duels for these nobles, and they're set up as their champions. So they come before these people, and these people end up, down on their knees, and he's about to finish them off. They're at the point of their death, and what do they have in their eyes? Fear. Why does everybody believe in heaven? We're supposed to be in the worst place. We're on Earth. This place is disgusting. It's garbage. It's supposed to remind us that we are dirty. And they're about to go to heaven. They're about to go to this place that they keep saying is so fantastic and it's so beautiful and it's so perfect, but yet they're afraid. Why are they afraid? It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't click in my head. So I think that was probably the bigger gut punch of anything here. And I guess technically it is kind of that final blow of him meeting the heretic, and the heretic's talking about how people are pushing away this fear. They're pushing away the truth. They're pushing away everything else. Makes sense to him. It's going to click in his head. But interesting that Glass picks up on it first. He's the first one to sort of draw his sword, cut the guy's restraints, and now claim that they're going to go somewhere. They're going to go to that mountain where that information is, that proof that where it's at. Which, yes, the day after Glass has basically lost this last hope he has, which is Mars and its perfect rotation, he's got this one hope that he finally found. Glass has already been at death's door. He nearly ended his own life. And now he's lost this one thing that at least gave him some hope. So he's back over here again. He's back to the noose. Which, yes, I obviously took note of the fact that he's been caught once. He's been claimed a heretic once because he tried to end his own life. He failed, and he still survived. So that means that if something happens here, if they do get caught, Glass is dead. Now, Oxy can possibly, recant and still survive, but Glass is dead. Which makes me believe that after this whole situation, once they find the information, they end up getting caught. I think Oxy's probably going to get tore up, but Glass is dead. Yeah, great episode. Really looking forward to more. My current predictions right now, like I said, we technically did see at the end of episode 3 how Oxy and Glass will get to the box. Now, they do go there alone. They are there alone, which tells me as they're escaping, possibly they'll end up killing the guy in the process, or they'll wound him, and on their way there, the guy will give them information of where it's at. He'll end up, collapsing. They'll run off, find this. And again, I think Glass is going to immediately click and connect it with his theory, with the Mars, the whole retrograde motion thing. And that's probably going to inspire Oxy. He's going to see how Glass's information has matched with what this guy's done, and that will give him enough proof that this is real. Now, Oxy doesn't seem like he is very knowledgeable about the stars, but it has put a lot of emphasis in this episode about his eyesight. Glass at some point said, with your eyesight, you would probably be able to see some beautiful things up in the sky. And again, they mentioned it when he was dueling. Yeah, your eyesight's incredible. You're able to pick up on things and sword fight really well because of it. So I think with his eyesight, that will turn him into becoming a scholar. He's not a scholar yet, but I think he's going to become a scholar because he's going to see how Glass connects that. And again, I think Glass is going to die, like right after that. Once Glass makes that connection, he'll be happy, and then he'll be able to pass away happily in the arms of the Inquisitors. But Oxy will be the one that will carry it on. He's going to have that information and that connection that Glass made, and he's going to carry it on. Now, again, the beginning of episode 1 technically spoils what happens to Oxy in the end. So the question mark's just going to be how far he gets. But we'll see. I am excited to see that we might actually get a full adaptation with this series, because when I was looking at the manga for the first 3 episodes, they covered, I think, 4 chapters. So 3 episodes, the first 3 episodes is the first 4 chapters of the manga. Now, episode 4 covered like 3 chapters. So the chapters are getting shorter. They're not skipping really much. Like there's a line here or there they skipped. Like they had this whole discussion about how their pay went down recently because the taxes are going up or something like that. Other than that, there's nothing like significant being skipped. Just like some certain conversations being paraphrased down a little bit. So with the chapters being short, if they're going to be able to cover like 3 or 4 chapters per episode, we might actually get a full adaptation with 25 episodes. So I'm super excited about that, getting a full story. But anyhow, we'll see. But that's my thoughts on episode 4. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below, comment. Let me know what's the episode. Let me know if you guys are interested in me actually covering this show. I'd be curious. Like I said before, I really am going to cover it if there's something to talk about. And so far, it's got a lot of really cool things to talk about. But I don't know if that'll be a weekly basis for this series. I'm not a scientist. I'm not into astronomy or anything like that. But I do like what it's sort of portraying with inspiration and whatnot. And that's the stuff I like to cover. So let me know. Additionally, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe before you leave. If you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have links in the description below. Greatly appreciate it. Until next time, y'all take care.